And so we looked at that video which showed you a whole bunch of different things. And you know, when you guys told me at the beginning of class today some of the things you thought of as characteristics of life, well, sometimes things that aren't actually alive might have certain characteristics that seem to be similar. Right? And so we're going to talk about some of that. Like, for example, one of the things we'll talk about is using energy. Does a light bulb use energy?
Yes.
Yeah. But is it alive?
No.
So there's certain things that we might think about that can help us understand what makes something alive. So let's just look at this here. Let's read this example. Marvin the Martian was sent to Earth by the Martian government to find life. While on Earth, Marvin captured a car and brought it back to Earth. Brought it back to Mars. He thought he'd found a good example of life on Earth. The Martian government does not believe that the car Marvin brought back is alive. Marvin must stand trial for failing to perform his duties. At the trial, Marvin spoke in his defense. I first saw these life forms rolling along roads in great numbers. They were giving off thick clouds of poisonous waste as they moved. They seemed to exhibit herding behavior, as many of the cars moved in the same direction. They appeared to have a great deal of energy. Some moved faster than 60 miles per hour. When one of these life forms stopped or slowed down, the others behind it responded. They slowed and gave off a reddish light from the back, and sometimes they'd make honking noises. I observed that they would stop and feed on a liquid substance. So, think about what Marvin was saying here when he looked at the car and thought that it was alive. What are some of the arguments for it? So what are the defense that's defending Marvin, saying he did the correct thing? What are some of the things they might cite that would help him prove his point that the cars are alive? Yeah?
Well, he is an alien, and when you first look at a car, it is moving.
Okay. The other day, a lot of you said, when we talked about what makes something alive, a lot of you said it moves. Okay? So the car does move. What's another thing that might be in his defense? Holly?
Cars use gas as fuel.
Okay, they use energy. They have to eat something in order to maintain and to keep going. Okay? A lot of you said the same, that living things have to eat things or need energy. So the cars do need energy. Anything else? You think another reason he may say that they are alive?
Some of them move in the same direction.
So they sort of coordinate their movement? Okay. Haley?
They respond to each other.
They're responding to each other in some way. When one stops or slows down, the others do? Okay. Well, what about the other side then? What about the prosecutor saying, no, Marvin is wrong, he didn't do his job, these things are not alive? What are some of the reasons you might come up with to say why they're not alive? Kristen?
There's like no way for it to breathe.
Okay. What about that? What about that waste coming out of them? Or what about them taking air into their engines? Is that like breathing? How about something else? Why is Marvin wrong? Olivia? Cars do need water. Where do you put water? In a car. Or also in the radiator. They need water in the radiator as well as antifreeze. Hannah?
Well, it's made of steel.
It's made of steel? Okay, so what does that have to do with anything?
No living thing is made of metal.
Okay, you're getting somewhere. More importantly than what it is made of is what it's not made of. Kristen?
Instead of like organs and stuff, like engines.
Okay, but aren't organs and parts of an engine similar? The car has a system of moving the wheels. It has a system of moving fluids around the car and so forth. Israel?
You don't have wheels for feet.
But we're not talking about people, we're talking about living things. So not just people. Nate?
It can't heal itself, but it, it's done or something.
Okay. Okay. That's interesting. How about if we get back to what Hannah was saying about it being made of steel? Hannah?
It's not made of like cells.
Okay, it's not made of cells. Okay, so now we're starting to get somewhere. Some of the key factors that make something alive. It's not made of cells. And being made of cells is one of the defining characteristics of all living things. Dana?
And it can't move on its own. Like it can't start itself up and start moving.
Okay. Okay. All right, good. All right, well, just something to think about. I don't really need you to write down those facts and stuff, but I just wanted to talk about that because, you know, you may think, oh yeah, everyone knows when something's alive, but when you try to sort of nail it down, it's sometimes hard to think about, okay, about what is and what is not alive. And even with certain types of things, scientists even have a hard time. For example, viruses. Scientists have a hard time determining, well, is it alive or is it not alive? All right, so what we're going to talk about here today is what are the characteristics of life. All living things have these 6 characteristics in common. All of them. If something's alive, it does all 6 of these things. And we'll talk about them, we'll list them first, and then we'll talk about them in a little bit greater detail. All right. So, how do you tell if something is alive? Well, there's over 5 million different types of living things. You know, sometimes when we talk about living things, and what's another word I'm going to start to use for living things? It means a living thing. Well, no, not, I mean, something else.
Organisms?
Organism. So when we say the word organism, we just mean any living thing. Any living thing. And sometimes we just think only animals. When we talk about living things, people think of only animals. Okay? But plants are alive. They are living organisms. So are bacteria. So are mushrooms. Okay? Many other things. So you have to sort of expand what you think about when we talk about living organisms. All right, so all living things have certain characteristics in common. 1, they're all made of at least one, often more than one cell. All living things are made of one or more cells. Okay, so all are made of one or more cells. Number 2, all living things must obtain and use energy in some way. All living things need energy, so they have to have a way of getting that energy. All living things grow and develop over time. All living things respond to their environment in some way. All living things reproduce in order to continue their species. And finally, all living things are adapted to their environment. So that's what we call the 6 characteristics of living things. They're all made of cells, they contain and use energy, grow and develop, respond to their environment, reproduce, and are adapted to their environment. So we're going to talk about these in a little bit more detail in our next couple slides. Yes? Are adapted, we'll talk about it in a minute in our next couple slides, but are adapted there might mean they have certain traits, certain characteristics that allows them to be successful in their ecosystem where they live. All right, so let's talk about some of the details. First off, cells. What exactly is a cell? Holly?
It's a living organism that your body that keeps the organism living.
Okay. So our bodies are made of cells, trillions and trillions of cells working together. Other living things are just one single tiny little cell, okay, that's able to live on its own. Okay? So what we say is that cells are the basic unit of life. All life is based upon cells. Most cells are very, very small. In fact, scientists didn't know that cells existed for a long time until what was invented?
Telescope.
Close.
Microscope.
Microscope. Microscope. Which allowed them to see very small things, and scientists began to discover that if you look at any living thing, it's made of these smaller compartments that allow it to work. So most cells are very small.
So if we got like, if I get my hand as like school and look through it, it would be like a bunch of cells.
Well, you can't look through your hand in a microscope,
But
but still, because light needs to pass through it, but you could take a sample of cells from part of your body. If you look at a very thin layer of skin under the microscope, yes, you see the same cells. We'll actually look at some human cells in our next unit. Yeah.
So cells are living too.
Cells are alive, yes.
Then our bodies are made up of living things.
Well, one cell from a person, though, cannot live on its own. Okay? So a person is made of many cells working together. Other organs are just single cells, but not two. Okay? So one cheek cell from your body is not a living organism. You are a living organism, made up of all these living cells. So some organisms are single celled, like a bacteria, an amoeba, paramecium, or like us, some living things are many celled. All living things are made of cells. Okay. So that was our first one, cells. Second is energy. All living things need a source of energy. Where do you get your energy? Brian?
The sun?
Not quite, but kind of. So, for you to walk through the cafeteria next period, where's that energy that's helping you move your legs come from, Ava?
Food?
Foods that you eat. We get energy from the food that we eat. Okay? All living things need a source of energy. Many organisms have to eat things to get energy, but some do not. What kind of living things don't eat anything? They get energy a different way. Brian?
Like iPods, iPhones?
Okay, they get energy from the wall. Okay, that energy comes from some source. We're thinking about living things. What kind of living thing gets energy but not from eating anything? Nate? Plant. Where do plants get energy? From the sun. They are able to make their own food using the sun's energy. But all living things need energy in some way.
Can I be a computer?
What's that?
A computer?
Computers are not. So what? Why aren't computers alive? Which of the characteristics do they not have? So do they need energy?
Yes.
Yeah, you have to plug them in. Okay. What else? Ava, what don't they?
They can't breathe.
They don't breathe. But that's not one of our characteristics, was it? Breathing?
They don't have any cells.
They're not made of cells. You know, they're made of plastic and metal. What else, Chloe?
They can't grow and develop.
They don't grow and develop. They're just stuck that way. They don't reproduce and so on. So some things have one or two characteristics of living things, but not all of them. All right, so all living things must get energy from their environment in some way. In this process we call metabolism. It's taking food and actually getting the energy out of it. And we have some steps of this. So this is our, today is Tuesday?
Yeah.
Popcorn chicken bites. All right, so if you go to the cafeteria next period, you eat some popcorn chicken bites. Sounds kind of gross, but your body is going to get energy out of that popcorn chicken. It begins with this first step, ingestion. Does anybody know what that means? If you ingest something, Anna?
To eat something.
Yeah, it means to eat something. That's eating. So you're going to go to the cafeteria and ingest some popcorn chicken bites. Who's going to ingest some popcorn chicken bites? Few people?
I'm like, maybe a salad.
All right. So you're going to ingest those popcorn chicken bites. Now then, do little chunks of popcorn chicken go to all of your cells? No, you eat hummus for lunch. Is hummus going to go through your blood to your brain? Your brain's going to have hummus in it? No, that sounds silly. What happens to that stuff?
Broken down.
Yes, that's our next step. So after food is ingested, goes to the digestion, and it's broken down. Okay? That's called digestion. So that popcorn chicken, stomach acid and enzymes are going to break it into tiny little molecules of very simple sugars and proteins and things. No hummus in your blood, sorry.
It's not bad for you.
It's a good thing.
No,
Like,
I like hummus.
just like the bread.
So we eat, which is ingestion. Then it gets broken down in our digestive system into simple things that our body can then absorb, that can go in our blood and be delivered to all of ourselves. Like we said, sugars and proteins and amino acids and other things. Once those tiny molecules get to our cells, there's another step that has to happen. It's called respiration. It's taking those molecules and actually getting usable energy out of them. So getting the energy out of these foods is called respiration. Happens in plants and animals, all living things. But there are some leftovers. There are some waste products produced by our body. We can't use everything. As we get the energy out of these foods, there's some byproducts that are left over, waste products. And those waste products need to be gotten rid of. If they build up in our body, they could actually become dangerous. They can start to poison us if we didn't get rid of these waste products. So excretion is getting rid of that waste. Now we're talking about these wastes, we're talking about molecules of nitrogen and other waste products, carbon dioxide that gets produced in our body, and we get rid of it mainly through our kidneys and through our lungs. The kidneys filter our blood, take out waste products, turn it into urine, which we then get rid of. Our lungs take blood, they get rid of the carbon dioxide that we exhale. Okay? Because if that built up in our body, it would become dangerous for us. So excretion is getting rid of those wastes. So next is stimulus and response. We said all living things respond to their environment. What does that mean? Respond to your environment. Yeah?
Like, if something happens, it will affect you.
Yeah, it affects you. There's some change. Okay? And so when we talk about living things responding, we talk about two parts: stimulus and response. The stimulus is some change in your environment. Okay, so a stimulus is some change in your environment. So, for example, at lunch today, if you go outside, a change in your environment might be it's cold outside. Might be a stimulus. How would your body respond to that? Holly?
Your body would start shivering.
Maybe you'd shiver. Okay? The stimulus was a change in temperature. The response is your body shivering. So the response is the reaction to the change. All living things respond to their environment in some way. Stimulus is the change, response is the reaction. So for example, if that's a stimulus, what is your response to that stimulus? Okay, how does your body respond to a loud, sudden noise? How do you feel, Haley? Shocked. What does that feel? How does that feel in your body? What happens to your heart rate? It goes up. If you get scared really bad, how does your stomach feel? Weird, right? Okay. No. Well, here, there you go. Loud noise. Yeah, put it on noise. Yeah.
Sometimes, well, that actually happened a few weeks ago. Maya, she was in the kitchen, I didn't know she was,
Okay.
and she started talking, and she scared me so bad, my body just stopped and I fell.
Okay, yeah, could be a sudden change like that. So loud noise that I made was a stimulus. You jumping and getting frightened was a response. How?
When you did that, like teachers, psychological issues.
Yep, I've heard that before. So that's an example of a stimulus and response. Good, that was fun. Not just reading.
You didn't hear that. I feel bad for these people.
Yeah, I know.
They're
You're scared of it? All right, so that's stimulus and response. All living things respond to their environment in some way. Number 4, growth and development. What's the difference between those two things? What does it mean to grow? Tommy? Yeah, the increase in size. How is that different than development? Tommy?
Well, like, as you get older, it's not like getting bigger, like,
Okay. Yeah, it's a change in not size, but in overall body structure. Okay? And now we're not just talking about people. Obviously, people grow through growth as well as development. But think about a butterfly or a tadpole. They have very distinct changes in development, where a caterpillar changes into a butterfly. Okay, that's development. All right. Example: tadpole changing into a frog. All right. Number 5, reproduction. All living things have to be at least capable of reproduction. Otherwise, If the species can't reproduce, what happens?
Becomes extinct.
It becomes extinct eventually.
Like,
Okay?
look at that picture of that squirrel on the bottom.
We'll get there, that's for adaptation. So, in reproduction, when we talk about living things, we say that there's two types of reproduction in most living things. We'll learn about more details eventually, but for now, we'll just list them. So in reproduction, there are two types, asexual reproduction and sexual reproduction. Some living organisms can reproduce what we call asexual. Okay? And what that means is there's only, so reproduction is the creation of new organisms. Asexual is when there's only one parent organism involved. For example, a bacteria cell, one bacteria cell can just split in two, and now it's reproduced. There's two bacteria. That's asexual reproduction. There was just one parent basically split in half, and now there's two of them.
Like a worm.
Some worms can do this. A starfish, you cut a starfish and you keep a piece of the central disc, each half will grow into a new starfish. Okay? That's asexual reproduction. There's just one parent. Okay, and the offspring, those new ones that are produced, they're identical to the parent. They're just like a copy of it. But that's different. Sexual reproduction, when two parents have to combine genetic information to form the offspring. So in sexual reproduction, there's two parent organisms involved. And there's a mixing of characteristics of each parent to produce the offspring. So in sexual reproduction, the offspring are not identical to either parent. They have a mixture of characteristics. Okay? And obviously it happens in people and mammals and other animals, but also plants reproduce sexually as well.